Hey guys, welcome back. Episode 2 of the yet to be named podcast. But shout out to a YouTube viewer and commenter. The handle was something like MEEF or some letters including M's and
EMEFEF, I think.
EMEEF or something like that. So thank you, honestly, for the comment. We had a suggestion for the name New Earth Conversations, Vilcabamba style. That is the front runner at the moment. So we'll see if it sticks, but that is number one. So thank you guys for tuning in last week, for all the comments, all the feedback. We really appreciate that. At the end of the day, we're doing this for fun, and we're doing this, hopefully to provide some value, right? To kind of let other people know that this is going on here too, and that other people are seeking and on their journeys and having these thoughts and these sorts of experiences and so on and so forth. So it's gratifying to know that people are enjoying it and they're getting something out of it. So thank you guys for tuning in. This is going to be a bit of a free-flowing conversation. We'll probably talk about all kinds of different things today, perhaps a little bit centered around synchronicities, and I keep forgetting the second one, synchronicities. Oh, right, of course, and the law of attraction. And maybe we start there with the law of attraction. It's, my view on that, right? The law of attraction is one of the most sort of cliche, sort of overused, really, things at this point that everyone teaches about, right? Like, there's anyone who's kind of in this sort of world or school of thought is aware of the law of attraction. It kind of blew up when the Secret came out, and it went mainstream at that point. And then there was a lot of sort of blowback and pushback of, this doesn't work and it's new age nonsense and, all that kind of stuff. And for me, where I've settled on the law of attraction is, it just is a fact, right? Like it literally is a universal law in the simple sense that and I think I probably said this on the last episode. I'll probably say this on every episode, but from my perspective, this experience is me in this case, interacting with my own consciousness, right? So the law of attraction says, hey, you're down here on Earth in this sort of pseudo or semi-simulation or perhaps full simulation, but you're in here in this sort of holographic simulation deal, and you're interacting with your own consciousness, and you're going to make choices and decisions, and then you're going to experience the results of those choices and decisions. You could argue you're going to experience the results of your vibration or your thought forms or your patterns or your energy field or however you want to put it. And then you're going to feel that. You're going to feel those results and you're going to learn stuff. That's kind of, to some degree, from my perspective, the game, right? The sort of Earth School, the lesson that is happening here. And that's the law of attraction, right? We can call that the law of attraction. You're happy, you put out a great vibe, you expect great things. You start to receive that, and vice versa, right? You're angry and you're upset and you're a pessimist and you think nothing's going to work out. It doesn't. For me, that's just, I've come to accept that as fact through experience in my own life. And I kind of find it actually comical that people sort of throw throw negativity towards that, because I think it's actually more of a law than gravity, actually.
Yeah, no. For me, it changed my life to get to know about the law of attraction. This was probably 10 years ago when you introduced this to me, and
I believe through The Secret. I think I showed you The Secret.
When you shared this movie with me, everything in my life made sense since then. Like, I was like, no way. Like, and I was seeing my memories of like how like I would roll my life, and I would roll. It depends, if I want this, it will happen. And don't get me wrong, the things I didn't want it, they also happen too, because the law of attraction doesn't understand what you want and what you don't want. Is that what you put your energy into it is what you're gonna receive, you know. So okay, so 10 years ago, I was in kind of getting part of the Jehovah's Witness. I was so ready to be part of their
Say it
crew.
again.
Jehovah's
What?
Witness.
Okay, that's what I
Jehovah's
thought I
Witness.
heard. I was like, is that the accent or what did you just say? Okay, so I don't know this about you. Please continue.
Oh
Yes.
my goodness, I was so
Interesting.
ready. I was already in my big skirts and dresses.
So you were 17.
Yes,
No.
yeah.
And you
They-
two knew each other at this time.
No.
No,
They said I was
okay.
a little later, but
Yeah,
I
so it
put
really,
my
and just to
face-
clarify
yes.
those timelines, so it wasn't 10 years ago,
Mhm.
actually, that I would have introduced you to the law of attraction. It's probably
like
8 years ago,
Okay.
10 years ago, this story you're telling
Yes,
now.
exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah. So when I find out the secret, this memory came to me when I was going to be part of the Jehovah's Witness. I was like, wow, they made me feel so safe and
Yeah.
protected, and they would make me pray for whatever I wanted or needed in that moment, and I was somehow it will become real what I was praying for. I was like, wow, this is it. This is the one. This is the religion that is the truth, because But that may when I was, they it was the dogma where like you cannot do this. You have to Then that turned me off, and I was like, I cannot do this. But when I was there and I was praying for what I wanted and how things were manifesting as I wanted, I was like, wow. And when I understand about the law of attraction, for me, like, it just confirmed that it's real. So after that, it changed my life in the way that I was a little more careful with what I was putting my energy into it. But even like I already knew, it's very easy to forget about it. So for so many years, I got fall into the putting my energy into things that are not good for me, and then they will come. I was like, yes, I attract this. Yes, unfortunately, but yeah, at least I grow. I learn from the experiences, and yeah, it's beautiful. For me personally, the law of attraction it changed completely my life, and I will still have to remind me sometimes about it. So yeah.
It's amazing how fundamental it feels to both of you, this law of attraction. And you're so right, Aide, it's so easy to forget sometimes. And this is why we have these practices that bring us back, whether it's your meditation or your yoga or your prayers or your spiritual books you get to read or audio podcasts. We need to be reminded. I feel like there's just this eternal, I feel I'm on this, like, I'm an eternal student, and you don't just take first grade and then you're done for the rest of your life. It's like, if you're interested in progressing your spiritual journey, you somehow get to the next thing. And sometimes you can go back and read the same textbooks 10 years later, and it's massively powerful. And yeah, it's really sweet that you acknowledge, like, it's so easy to fall off the path. And maybe you're not totally off the path. It's not like you went and flipped a switch to 100% off, but it's a slippery slope.
Yep.
It's sometimes, you get some negative vibes and energy and frustration, and these are natural human emotions. And before you know it, you're just walking around pissed.
Yes.
And you're going to be attracting things that are meeting that frequency and that
Yeah.
energy.
Yeah.
And to me, that's what the law of attraction really is. And it's so funny. So I didn't actually do this, but I'll share it. When we're talking about, like, messaging about, all right, what should we talk about today, and some topics, because there's essentially 1,000 things that we could talk about. Let's try to anchor at least one or two, right? And law of attraction, I'm so familiar with it. I definitely studied it, but it's been so long since I've actually, like, read that kind of specific material. And when you mentioned The Secret, does anyone know when The Secret originally came out? Was it the 90s or 80s?
The book came out. Yeah, I don't know.
But
No,
it's about then. It might be the early 90s.
Really? I didn't know it was that old.
So we'll look it up. You can drop a comment, or we'll Google this afterwards. But
Drop a comment.
Okay. I remember The Secret from growing up, and my mom was really into it because
really?
my aunt was into it, and I think it was the 90s. So
Oh, interesting.
yeah, I graduated high school in 1998, and I'm almost positive, memory's slippery, I think it was before I graduated high school that was in my field growing up. And my aunt, my mother's sister, is also a Reiki master. And this is back in the 90s. I grew up in the kind of New York tri-state area. All of this, I didn't even know the words like woo-woo or hippie. It was just all BS. I was like, this is crazy town. What is anyone talking about? I was not really oriented in that kind of spiritual awareness. It's much more practical in my raising. But I remember The Secret being such a big thing that my mom really shifted a lot of her own thinking at that time, because it was so against her way, not against, but it was opposite of a lot of the way that she used to operate. And law of attraction was a common phrase in our house. And my dad, I think, is a generalist and believes the concept, but what he didn't like, I might be a little bit misquoting. Dad, if you're watching this, I don't mean to put it all wrong, but I'm just saying, to go back to something else you both were indicating or alluding to, there's a lot of people who don't like these kind of intense, like, spiritual concepts because they feel like it's selling them something. And I feel like this law of attraction sometimes gets a bad rep from people who they're like, oh, that's culty thinking. Yes, because in every single spiritual philosophy, religion, XYZ, there's always going to be extremists who take this into a nefarious place, and they end up trying to control people and manipulate them with whatever it is, law of attraction, Catholicism, Hinduism, yoga. I mean, oh my God, all the, bad things that have happened with the yoga gurus, quote unquote, over the years, like the scandals that come out. So I don't think that's everybody, but sometimes these, like, philosophies get a bad rap because there's people misrepresenting them and abusing power. That happens in all philosophies. And so what I almost did, I was about to say this before, I almost was going to quick Google and research law of attraction just to make sure I knew what I was talking about on this podcast. But then I thought, no, just trust that I have the information, because I know it has been a big part, like you said, Jesse, of almost every spiritual philosophy out there makes some sort of, they might use their different lingo, but they make some sort of association to this basic concept of what goes around comes around. What you put out there, you will get back. Treat others how you want to be treated. I'm starting to shout right now because I get excited that there's these universal truths, which I think you both were saying. And wherever a person on their journey finds a heartfelt, deep resonance of authenticity with the truth, it doesn't matter if it's a Jehovah's Witness philosophy, or again, like a Buddhist philosophy, or just a meditative, transcendental meditation philosophy. You're feeling truth. If your heart awakens, go down that path and deeper find out what that's about if you feel a connection. And so I have felt a deep connection to this law of attraction. And I don't really use that phrase, maybe because I'm a little jaded by it. But in my, core yoga studying and the teachers I've studied with and teaching yoga these days, that's a big part of what I speak about. It's like we raise our vibration, because when we do so, we affect the vibration of the whole. We will not only attract the things that we want, our highest selves, but we also help other people rise up as well. Yes. And I think that's law of attraction, because you're putting good energy out there. You lead with authenticity, and just, I'll leave this as my last little point on this particular moment. Be generous. And that's one of the things that yoga philosophy taught me, and my teachers taught me years and years ago. In the very beginning, it hit home. It's like, be generous first without question. Don't get walked over. It doesn't mean you overgive. It doesn't mean you throw everything to other people and not care about what's yours and what's right. But be generous first without question, because, again, what you put out there is going to come back to you. And people need kindness. They need generosity. And I want kindness and generosity in my life. So that's been one of my rules of thumb. It's like, just show up. And if you can give a little more in that moment, give a little bit more. Yes. And that's going to go such a long way. And it does not matter ever if that person you give a little bit more to ever gives you a little bit more, because that's not how law of attraction works. It's not tit for tat. No. It comes around in full circle. Yes. Yeah. And it might come around 10 years later. And I've actually felt that in my life, but I'm not going to keep going on. Okay. I'll pause there.
Yeah. It's, a lot of people, I think part of the reason that law of attraction meets resistance in people's minds is because there's so many programs running, and so many of those programs have to do with, you can't have everything you want, life is hard, all these kinds of things.
Watch your back.
Right. And then some philosophy, some person's telling you, well, actually, it's a mirror, and if you put out good, you're going to get back good. And what do you mean? I can't have everything I want. And that whole thing kicks in, right? And I think that's why sometimes people will even get angry, right? They'll even get angry rejecting those kinds of ideas because it hurts to think about there not being so much suffering in your life because you've had so much, right? It hurts to think about that sort of dream sort of life that you've wanted but don't believe you can have. And then so for someone to tell you, hey, there's this trick that could kind of maybe get you there, there's a lot of programming there. And then I also think it's interesting, right? Because I think a lot of people, it's like understanding the philosophy, implementing it into practice are two very, 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 very different things, right? I understood intellectually this stuff going back to 2010, 11, 12. And, I've had many stretches of my life that were a disaster between then and now, right? And what I've discovered, and I think is probably a universally true thing, is that it doesn't matter what you know if you have traumas, because your traumas also attract, by the way, right? Your traumas attract as well. So your traumas create a story in your head, which then the trauma attracts that same situation to happen over and over and over again, so you can heal the trauma. So that the trauma can get in the way of the law of attraction working. It is working, but you can't defeat the trauma. You have to release the trauma to be able to then have a different program running that then creates the result you want. So that's one piece of it. And then the other piece are the programs. So it doesn't matter how much you intellectually know about the law of attraction, how true it is. If you have programs running that are not getting you what you want, that is going to function through the law of attraction. So the traumas and the programming have to be worked through and released in order to then have the vibration you want, have the sort of state of mind, the energy, all that stuff that you want to have, to then kind of have the life you want, have the things you want. And I think also those things are things that frustrate people, because that's what leads to people saying, this doesn't work. And it's like, well, it's working. It's just you've got this other stuff that, yeah.
Yeah, I probably think that could be also like the not wanting to take responsibility of it as well. Because I remember when this happened, and I shared to a bunch of people because it changed my life. I was like, I want all the people I love know about this, and like to be to change this, and it will help them in their lives. It helped me, so I want that for everyone. So most of the people that the feedback was like, no, like I didn't attract this, I did not, like, because they don't really want to see that
right,
part. So that was like the bad side. Like, shoot, if you don't want to own it, I own it. Like it was a part in my life that it was like I was super insecure, and all my insecurities would come back. I'm like, yeah, I think I brought this back in my life. So completely, I own it. Yeah.
That's an observation I have about you, Aide, in the time that we've been friends and getting to know each other and just different things happening in life. Like, life happens fast in Vilcabamba. It happens fast everywhere. I think it might be like
it happens
extra
very
fast.
Slow and very fast in Vilcabamba. Right?
We can talk about the time contraction and expansion. Maybe that's episode number 3. That's interesting. Time, space, dimensions and Vilcabamba's vortex. Yeah. But wait, going back to Aide, I was saying this. I've admired how, and it might not be in that moment because it's almost impossible to be unbiased, self-observing ourselves in the moment, self-observation. But I've seen you time and again, like, take responsibility just in conversation with the two of us. We're sharing stories about what's going on in life, and this happened. And I've always been really impressed that it's so natural. You're not trying to force it. You're certainly not trying to like impress me or prove anything to me, but you're just saying like, I attracted this. I'm like, really? Tell me, come on now. Let's break this down. How, and you have a very honest lens that I think you can turn on yourself that I've admired to just So a lot of people are in this avoidance mode and the blame game. It is not that. They might take like a 5% blame, but man, is that 95%? It's the other person, it's the situation, it's the unfairness, it's God, it's whatever has wronged them. And I feel like you've named it here sweetly. It's like self-responsibility, and taking that and just
Completely.
sometimes you don't know what to do with it once you take it, but it's just to just kind of have awareness of that, of like, I'm attracting something here. I think you said, like, don't know what I'm doing, I don't know why it is, but I'm attracting this right now. And it's like, I've appreciated that.
Yeah.
Well, there's solutions in that. There's power in that.
Yeah.
Like I spent years of my life thinking everything was happening to me. And when I figured out that every single thing in my life is my responsibility, which I still slip up sometimes, right?
Yeah.
For sure. But I'm decent about that. Man, it was a game changer. Because now you have, now it's under your control.
Yeah.
Whereas otherwise it's not. Mm-hmm. So if you're looking at if anything that you experience, you then immediately look at yourself, then all of a sudden you have tools. You can manipulate that reality because it's your reality. Otherwise, it's kind of a bleak world if it's kind of random and it's happening to you and it's not your fault and this guy did this to me and
Kind of like sorry, keep going.
I would say I find these people a lot, and by these people it's like I identify that because I remember having similar thoughts years ago of people always seem to have the same drama repetitively in their life. It's the same fight, it's the same I got taken advantage of, the same like that was trippy, like a Matrix coconut moment there. I got taken advantage of, and people sometimes, and it's relationships. Sometimes you keep calling in that same kind of toxic pattern with a guy or a girl, and it's like, so I think if you find yourself, and I've done it, I'm like, why am I in this situation again? What am I doing? Like, how can I grow from this? What can I learn from it? And it's pushed me to go deeper into some spiritual practices, a little on the edge of desperation on occasion. I'm like, what is going on that this is happening? I'm so frustrated because I'm trying for something else. I think I'm doing good in the world or whatever. And like, what's going on? And I really just pause, and I don't often have the immediate solution because I'm not there in my karmic lesson and education. And once I do get there, then I do feel karma's resolve and something else comes in and you're working on the next thing. But I think it's, if every person in this world, like I try to walk an example, we take self-responsibility. And I just keep coming back to kindness. Like no matter what's going on, putting kindness out there, even if you're so frustrated, that law of attraction, if every person had a little bit more of that, I think the world could be a different place energetically. And it could create some way better vibration for everyone to be operating in a higher frequency, making kinder decisions, being more patient. We don't know what could happen, if we change the frequency of our energy that we put out there. And I will say myself too, we can all do it. It's
the wounds that match with people. And that's what it is, right? And so that's the aspect of you interacting with yourself. So it's like, this was like my whole life, right? I was always in the same situations over and over again, and I'm angry about the same things. And it took me figuring out what the wounds are to understand why that thing keeps coming back to me in that way, right? And it's so that I can see the wound and deal with it, and then it's not, there is no situation anymore because you're not triggered.
Yeah.
Right? Like the situation only exists because it's triggering something in you. Someone could say the same thing to you. If you're not triggered, it doesn't bother you. But that's the wound, and that's why,
Exactly. It's very funny because it brings me up to this very popular phrase. I don't know if you guys have it in English, but I hear this phrase saying by women usually, oh, all the men are the same. But because they are attracting to the same kind of men over and over till they figure out. But that's part of the wound, because they are attracting the wound over and over. And in my experience, till you don't heal the wound, you don't process what you didn't process when you were a little kid, then it's gonna stop. So that's how I experience it. So it's very funny.
100%. So how do synchronicities play into all of this? This is for me, it's been wild, absolutely wild. Like oh my god, like the way the universe communicates with you when you're kind of in the groove, right? When you're not, it kind of sends you daggers. Speak for myself, but when you are, wow, the communication for me over the last 12 years has just keeps amplifying. The first time I experienced that was 2012, 13. I'm preparing to come to Ecuador, and basically I'm sitting in my office and I have this sort of incredible idea, which was not original at all, but felt original to me in the moment. Although it also didn't feel like my idea. It feel like it was put into my head. Where it's like, hey, why don't we go down to South America, to a country that there's some freedom, and buy a big piece of land and implement all the cool shit we've been learning about for the last couple of years. I'm talking to a friend of mine on a Saturday in my office in Manhattan, and let's see what we can do with that, right? Let's see what kind of vibration we can create in a large space with all of the sort of new earth technologies, and pulling people out of the money system and dealing in a good way with health and all kinds of things. Not communist style, by the way. No hippie communes. I love hippies, but I'm all about, free everything.
That's the manifesto that they work by too, but continue. Please continue.
Right. And so kind of during this time, right? So I had this idea, and then very quickly things started rolling towards selling assets and dealing with 10,000 things I had to deal with and moving to Ecuador. And it was like the universe aligned itself around giving me everything I needed to do that. It was wild. Like I needed some work done on the back of decided to sell the building I was living in, and I needed some work done. And the crew that came over to do the work, who was recommended through a friend of mine who's a builder, were Ecuadorian. And we're sitting there talking about Cuenca and Ecuador, and they're giving me contacts, and it life was that way until I got to Ecuador. It was wild. Like I would be walking on the street, my thought would go I need a taxi. I'd pull taxi. All right. And it was just like this all day, every day. All of a sudden I had a whole bunch of money to do what I needed to do, in short order. It was like, here you go. Here's all the money. Here's the this, here's the that, here's the partner. Here's it was amazing. So that was the first time I experienced that. Then I went through a very difficult stretch of time in Ecuador where it was so painful how far away I was from that time where I was experiencing all the synchronicities. Then some years later, it started to come back, and it's kind of gone in and out over different periods of time over the last 10, 12 years. A lot of it is through numbers. So I get the 333, 1111, 222, 444. It's uncanny. It's absurd. It's gotten to the point where it's just like a rhythm for me. It's like, okay, it's 111. Oh, it's 222. Okay, confirmation of this, confirmation of that, confirmation of that. It happens, I notice, through nature a lot and through animals. I don't think I described. I've told this story 3 or 4 times. I hope it wasn't on the podcast, but we're out at did I tell this on the podcast? We're out at the land a couple weeks ago, and it was a brutal day. It was freezing cold, and it was raining and windy, and I had taken mushrooms, and it was just a brutal day, and I could get into it. It was funny. It was really, really brutal in every way, emotionally, and the whole thing. And we're kind of finally at the end, the sun kind of clears up, and we're getting out of there, and I'm with my kids, and we're going down the mountain, and we're coming out, and we gotta go down a little bank and cross the river and get out of there. And we were kind of felt like we had defeated an army by that point, right? and I'm going with my kids. They're across the river already. I'm going, ah! We're just kind of doing warrior roars back and forth, 2-year-old and 4-year-old. And this dog that lives on the land. He's the caretaker's dog. We're giving these roars, and this dog, all of a sudden, it was like I looked at the dog. It was almost like this spirit went through it, and it goes, "Arr! Arr!" And it just starts howling anyways, stuff like this, right? Birds will chirp in confirmation. The wind will blow in confirmation. And then there's a lot of times where you're looking for somebody, and if it's sort of destiny or it's approved, or there's a better word for that, but that thing will just come to you. And so, I've had that experience a lot, and I take it as a sign when those things aren't happening, because I'm like, all right, I'm out of the flow here. What do I need to look at? And I'll try to back up, go meditate or something, do some yoga, take a breath, read a book, go to the river, take mushrooms, do something, and recalibrate. Because I've noticed if my energy is not right, those things are not happening.
Interesting.
Which means that the results of what I'm trying to do are not going to be what I want. And at that point, there's no point to keep moving forward, because I'm just going to dig a deeper hole. So anyways, that's
So beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate the animation at like 10 speed too, because I can feel how authentic it is to you, and I know you well, and like that is how you look at things. And I think there's like a sweet little magic to that. Like when you do business, in your personal life, in our community, spiritual life, it's like to be really open and tuned into it. I think it's part of your magic, Jess.
Thank you.
I see that. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, well, I could share like millions of synchronicities, but the ones that I can kind of recall the most now is, for example, how I meet Jesse. Somehow, I was introduced. You would be better at sharing this story.
Do you want me to?
Please.
It's kind of a wild story.
It's super weird.
I'll try not to make it too long, because it's probably only interesting to me and you. But
that was the synchronicity part.
Yeah. So Ide's young, 18-year-old girl. I see her in town. I'm blown away. Don't think anything of it. Way too young. Some time goes by. But I always remembered there was this girl, a very beautiful girl that I had seen. I always remembered, didn't think a lot of it other than wow. Then some period of time later, my dad is down visiting. I spoke very little Spanish at that time, but more than him. My dad's down visiting, and he's interested in renting a horse for something. I don't know what. You're not going to get me on a horse, but he's
to ride.
Perhaps to ride. Yes, it's good thinking.
Yoga loves horses.
That's true.
It's
You
cool.
even ride them.
Don't get distracted.
Very
Don't get
adventurous.
distracted. Yes. Next episode.
Right. And we so he comes to get me, and he's like, "Hey, could you help me talking to this girl who I want about the horses?" So I go in, and there is this gorgeous girl in there, absolutely beautiful, young girl. And my dad's in there, and so I won't blow the punchline, I already did, but so I help him in my limited Spanish to talk about the horses. We leave, and I always looked for this girl after that. There was this girl that I was like, I couldn't get out of my head. I'm like, wow, this girl's so beautiful. I had gone back to look for her. She wasn't there. I was like, ah, damn. Then I met Ide years, some period of time later, months later, and we ended up, starting to hang out and stuff like that. And for years, it bothered me because there was this other girl that I never could think about. And then one day we discovered it was her. So my dad actually introduced me to my wife on purpose. Because we walked out and I was like, man, that girl was hot. And he's like, yeah, why do you think I went and got you to translate? Like,
come on, son.
Yeah,
come on,
get with it, right? So anyways, that's the story.
Yeah, I couldn't share it better. But yeah, the other one that I can
But
remember.
what was your thoughts, Ide? You were like, oh, look at this guy? Or like, I don't remember him.
Honestly, no, it was like a lot of gringos that would come to these places. I had 2 jobs at that time.
Okay,
so I would be
yes.
in one place and the other one. So I just didn't understand, and I have very little self-love, so I don't even ever think that somebody like puts
She's
my
so
fish.
honest and like self-aware of like,
So,
growth
like,
edges.
I would never like look out, like I never thought. So they will always come and like talk to me. I would never understand what they say because I didn't speak the language. But I couldn't really remember any of this. I remember the other guy that came to my other job and tried to talk to me.
That was also me. But you were the one that got away. And then we realized
got away.
And then we realized it was the same.
No, one time, like we're sitting in the restaurant and he shared with me about this girl, like he was being honest. I'm like, I was working there when you met this girl. And he told me the time, and I was the only girl working there in that time. After that, they closed. So it was like, wow, I can't believe it.
Yeah, they closed. Exactly. I was like, the girls are gone. They closed.
So, yeah.
Did you have a vague sense it might be the same girl? I never
Not at all. Not at all.
I mean, unless you like cut your hair
or
something.
I usually always will do something in my hair, like.
Okay, because you might have like had a hat on one day, your hair was back or something.
I'd only seen her once. My only recollection was wow. Like You
felt the energy. Let's put it that way. Right. You felt her spirits. It wasn't just about the looks.
True. That's probably
Probably. I'm trying to help you out here.
I'm very likely like we were like attracted by the wounds. Me and Jesse, we complement each other.
Sure.
Yeah. With that a lot. He says a lot of beautiful things. About my physical, but. I think actually our wounds were
it's all of it. It's the wounds, it's the physical beauty, and it's the spiritual path. It's like the what's the 1 and 1 equals 3 opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No. Yeah, I must say, like I really grow a lot with you. So yeah, that was meant to be. Thank you.
Pop. Thank you.
Thank you. Exactly. Well done.
Yeah. Well, when I was little, I was moved to Spain, so I was adopted by a Spanish guy that I will call him my uncle, but he was actually like my father. He had like a bunch of properties, but in the summer he would take us to one of his apartments in the beach, and I never understand it, but like the buildings there have names of countries. The apartment that he had like for 20 years, the name of it was Ecuador. I was like, what? It was weird. Like when I was growing up, I never noticed, but...
Because you're from Ecuador originally.
Yes, exactly.
Moved to Spain for a long period of time.
He's from Spain. Okay. He had this apartment, and there is hundreds of buildings with different names. He had the one with Ecuador in. He adopted me and my sisters from Ecuador. I was like, wow.
Wow.
And yeah, it was beautiful.
I mean, if we're telling stories like that, I've been in Ecuador 10 years in July, I believe, right? Which is tomorrow or something. So yeah, I've been here 10 years. I think that I've seen one U.S. license plate in Ecuador in 10 years. I don't recall seeing a second one ever. I'm at our office in Loja. I grew up in Vermont. We're at our office in Loja back in the day. I walk out of my office, and there's like a Subaru, because that's what you drive if you live in Vermont. There's like a Subaru parked outside the office with Vermont license plates.
What?
Where I grew up.
I remember that.
In Loja?
In Loja.
Yes.
In Loja. What?
Explain
How
that
they
to
got
me.
the car.
Actually, that's freaky. That's like out of the movie stuff. Where like they like change the plates to like send you on your journey. It's like very Matrixy. Like, exactly. You're like, wait a minute, what's happening? Is this a sign? Like set up for you to see.
No, there is pictures. There are proofs.
So what did you take that as? Like, what was going on in your life? Was there any interpretation or just like a holy, like what was?
I didn't have an answer at that time.
Yeah.
I really didn't. I was just
too busy working.
Yes, right. I had sort of reapplied myself to the Matrix at that time.
Yes. Well, you go through those cycles too. I keep going through these cycles again and again. I have apparently not learned some karmic lessons that I need to, because it just keeps dressing up in different costumes and going around.
Mm-hmm.
Really? You think the karmic lessons are ongoing, huh?
It should go figure. Go figure. Did I get that original thought? Fascinating. Sometimes I think the universe is just winking at us. That's what I like to say. That was just like a wink of like, hey man, like I got your back. I'm looking out for you. Like there's something going on here.
Totally.
And that's how, and sometimes I take synchronicities. It's like, it doesn't have to mean something. Like I don't have to like have the answer to my life and relationship and job and this like one like a coconut that I stumbled across. It's like, that's not how it goes. Let's not overread into it, because sometimes it drives me a little crazy and I can laugh at myself. It's like, I can drink the spiritual Kool-Aid a bit much. It's like, it can just be a sign that there's all these connections. Like that could be the synchronicity purpose, is just to remind me that there's all of these connections and like a quantum entanglement of everything. And not to forget that. Because sometimes, as we were saying way earlier, it's easy to forget the spiritual lessons, or it's easy to forget like that we're all in a path and everything is happening for us and not to us. We are not in a victim, mindset of like, oh my gosh, all this drama and bad negative things happening. It's like, no, we need these reminders of like, whatever's happening to you is actually part of your journey that's going to take you to the next level. And I look at it like, this is what ascension means. And this is like going up, whether it's a ladder or just a journey, whatever the metaphor is, we all are kind of graduating through these karmic lessons. And then as soon as we do, the next one comes up that we're ready for, like that spiritual lesson. And these synchronicities are like, you know what, you're going in a right direction. And sometimes the struggles that we have, that's when I found when the synchronicity feels like the sweetest, it's like, oh, something's going right. I think there's a sign.
Right,
there's a reminder sign of, you know what, trust. And maybe I'll just layer in this thought of like, this is where my faith comes in. And that word faith can mean many different things to different people. And for me, it just means when I remember to trust that it's all happening for a reason, that's my faith. And I fall out of that and I forget it sometimes and I lose my faith. And then I come, and we've all been through, the three of us, and I would imagine every person watching this has been through massively difficult, crazy stuff that's happened to them. And it's hard to keep faith in those moments. But in keeping that and seeing it through, every single thing I look back on in that's happened to me over all the years, I realize it led me to where I am right now.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And if that thing didn't happen, well, yeah, I would have been on a different journey, but like it makes me so grateful for even some of the biggest can be labeled as traumas or drama, or negative things. I'm like, no, it all happens.
Well, and getting your ass kicked is the fail safe. It's the thing that is set up to keep you on track. Right? Like if you made stupid decisions that created more karma and caused more issues in your life and your results were good from that, we could easily get lost on that road. Not that we can't already. We can compound one bad decision after another and it can spiral that way. But the fail-safe is it gets worse and worse and worse, your experience in life. So that's a gift at the end of the day, even though it feels shitty, it's a gift. And there's one other thing I was going to say about that, which is slipping my mind, but yeah.
I can add on to that. I want to give you a second.
Please.
But just, I thought of this way earlier when we were speaking today. It's the spiritual journey is not all sunshine and roses. It is not easy. Like I thought of this like way earlier. Like this is, and I think a lot of our conversations are going to come back to like, what is the pain we've gone through? What is the suffering? And what are the traumas at different stages of life? Because I feel these are universal experiences of humans. And some of the comments that were on the first podcast episode that we released, I was really touched by them, and people were saying, thank you for being honest about your journey. Thank you, Ide, for this and that. Like, wow, Jesse, I totally resonated when you said this or that. And I realized we're touching people because we're being really honest. And this is an honest part of it, is that it can be really difficult. This spiritual bypass, that phrase, and I think it's how I define it, or it's generally understood, is when we kind of have these spiritual practices, and maybe it's meditation or yoga, and we're avoiding what the heart of your issue or your trauma or your karma is in that moment, that you really need to go deep into to understand your subconscious and the psyche to help you work through something and learn something. And then you can move on from that relationship or that job or whatever it was that blew up. A lot of times a spiritual bypass is like, well, I meditate twice a day and I'm feeling just great because I know it's all on the path and I'm totally fine that I just got divorced and have 5 kids and there's no money. And no, you're not fine. Like just because you're spiritual and you people, a lot of, well, I won't get into the plant medicine ceremony because I think those can be a double-edged sword of like incredibly helpful, but also spiritual bypass for some people. Anything can be a spiritual bypass. So
you can hide behind anything.
Yeah, exactly. And so anyone listening, like, we're 3 people who are really honest about what some of the shit we've been through. And that I think there's a connection that people feel like, wow, I can relate to these stories because no one's been through my exact journey or your exact that one, but the stories are so similar.
Yeah.
They're just dressed up in different costumes, as I like to say. There's a universal truth in them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, go ahead.
No.
Well, there's pain and suffering cause learning.
Mm-hmm.
Like humans learn well through pain and suffering. It's kind of a harsh reality of experience in this realm.
Yeah.
Is that that's how a lot of the lessons come, right? And so I think you can ease that, and you can get to a place where there's a lot less of that than more, but that's through learning the lessons. And usually that means a lot of pain and suffering along the way, and a lot of falling down and getting back up, and learning the hard lessons for real, right? So that you can actually implement things like the law of attraction in a clean, sort of advanced way, so you can make things a little bit more pleasant, in this experience, because this experience can be hell. It can be whatever you make of it, quite literally, right? There's people who are having totally sort of heaven-like blissful experiences on earth, and people living in hell. And I think most people have probably experienced both in their life to some degree. So
I have a thought on that, but I want Ide to be able to go. I feel like
I'm good.
A few things. You're sure?
Yes.
Come on.
No,
now.
it's just the same thing. I believe the same thing.
All right. If you have a thought, I would love to hear. On that note, Jesse, about pain and suffering. I feel like this is so important. I have the thought, and it might come out a little off because I'm just trying to feel into what it is. I agree, and that is one of the foundational pillars of Buddhism. All of life is suffering. So yes, I feel that. I've experienced a lot of that, maybe double down and triple down on that. And I also feel so much of it is also our mindset.
Yeah.
And we can be in a place of, I dare say, I'm gonna put this out there. You can be in a place of joyfully appreciating life while there is radical suffering happening. And it might not be 100%, but you start to see the beauty in some of the most painful things because it's popping something through to you. Maybe it's a lesson, maybe it's a deeper connection. Yep. And there's this book written by Elizabeth Lesser, and it's called Broken Open. It's probably like 10 to 15, maybe more years old. And Elizabeth Lesser is the founder of Omega Institute in Rhinebeck, New York. You might be familiar. The equivalent, a little bit or similar to Esalen Institute in California. A lot of, call it either New Age or spiritual philosophical teachers have been teaching there since like the 60s, I believe, at least 70s, I think 60s. Elizabeth Lesser has seen so many profound teachers come through her Omega Institute, retreats and workshops. I've been to many, many, many. And this book, Broken Open, she kind of took a lot of lessons from real life people just like us, and what some of the spiritual responses were from teachers like Ram Dass. We're going to bring Ram Dass into every episode we talk about here. He was a big lecturer and speaker at Omega Institute, and this book, Broken Open, is focused exclusively on, I think, about 20 individual stories of everyday people of some of the most radical trauma that you can experience, like death of children, cancer, car accidents, just loss and devastation, which are very upsetting and traumatic, all the human experiences that are natural, and how the title Broken Open is what it did to their heart, and it broke them open to the next level of spirituality. And it's not to say that they are glad and would choose for their child to die. That's literally one of you can imagine these stories. There's stories of deep horror. So the parent's not glad that the child is dead, but they have been broken open in a way to get some spiritual lesson that was right for them, that there is beauty in this. And I haven't read that book in over 10 years. I used to recommend it to so many people, all of my clients when I was doing coaching. It was part of like a curriculum, because even if I was just meeting a client who I was doing spiritual health coaching with, I knew they had trauma in their life. And that book was so universal. And I think, I forget what your point was, Jesse, but something made me think like there's suffering, and then there's also this beauty on the other side of that suffering. I think that's a cycle we keep moving through in the experience of being human.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. It's I think that's kind of why a lot of the spiritual philosophies teach presence, because the presence, full presence, sort of overrides all the stories, and the stories are what creates the perspective, and the perspective is what creates the suffering.
Yes, it's how you look at it. Yeah. It's the lens.
Right.
Keep going.
No, that's really it. So if you are fully in presence, which is not necessarily easy, especially in the whole matrix world of like responsibilities and go and all that kind of stuff, it's very easy to live in the mind and live in the future or live in the past. But if you're really fully in presence, there isn't a lot of suffering. There's just sort of phenomena that's happening, but you're still there and you're okay. Even if you're dying, you're okay. Because it's just happening. It just is. And I think that's why a lot of those religions or those philosophies are, that's kind of what they're pointing towards, is that full presence.
Really well said.
In the present moment, because the tendency is to stress out about the future or like regret the past. So no, completely. That's part, like when I was through my awakening, which the gate of my awakening was through pain. And my gift was to read The Power of Now, that was all about. And then I was like, there is nothing to worry about. Like, there is no tomorrow, there is no now. This is all I got. Like, I don't know if I'm gonna be alive 5 minutes later. There is nothing I have sure. This is what I got. I gotta be grateful for what I got now. So beautiful.
It's so funny. As you're just saying that idea, I realized, that's what Jesse was summing up, was the power of now. Because literally, that's the whole title of the book. The power of now is exactly what you said. But I didn't put 2 and 2 together because it is such universal truth. Right? Yeah. And it's been a long time.
This has been said 10,000 ways by 10,000 people.
And it's a little funny, and like maybe that makes me feel good sometimes. It's if it's been said that many times in that many different languages, translations of that many different religions and philosophies, it's because we all need to hear it. I think the power of now, and set me straight, somebody out there, I know I'm going to get the quote wrong, but I think it's been translated into like 38 languages or something like that. There, and it's read by millions of people. Millions. I remember I read the statistic and I thought, wow, I can't believe that many people like grok this, like this meaning, like that means that word grok is like, it is part of them. Like they get it at such a deep level that they know it's them, and they have invested their time and energy to read it. And then also sometimes I look around, this is like my snarky, sarcastic self, I'm like, really, have that many people read this book? Because I feel like people could be behaving a little bit differently. And what I'm seeing is a reflection of myself. And how can I be behaving a little bit differently, or what's triggering me that I see in other people? Okay, how is that? And some sort of funhouse mirror of like reflection of something in me. When I get real pissed, I'm like, that person definitely has not read the 4 Agreements. Like, whatever. Go to basic spiritual school. Well, what is it about them that I still have a little piece of that in me? That's what this shit's all about. It's like, all right, fine. Better meditate on that one tomorrow.
Right. And that goes back to the to the intellectual understanding versus deep instilled, authentically living the lessons, 2 very different things.
And a lot of space in between. Like, you have a lot of different stages.
Levels. And
sometimes we slide back, and then sometimes we really walk that, we really walk that truth. And man, how good does that feel? When like a certain thing comes up in a situation, a circumstance, you're like, wow, I actually was like anchoring or repeating mantra or meditating, like, do what's right, be my highest self, like just be authentic. And it was a hard thing. And it doesn't matter the outcome happened, but if you showed up and tried your highest self version, I think that's all we can do, is we can just try to be the best version of ourselves, and everything else sorts itself out.
Well, that's another trap too. Like I think like we're all way too hard on ourselves. Right? Like I think we all, I'll
raise 2 hands for that. Fine. I'll double down. I'll double. Yeah.
Like I think we all just spend way too much time beating ourselves up for not living up to our own expectations, spiritual or otherwise, which, going back to law of attraction, doesn't bring what you want in your in your life, right? So it's another trap. There's a lot of traps in this realm.
What is up with
that?
Weirdest
place to live.
Of all your lifetimes of different planets and galaxies I day, is this like one of the weirdest places?
Yeah, but I actually love it. I love the experience.
Yes. Look at this.
I grow. I take the experience for me to grow.
Oh,
Yeah, it's
man.
basically like, I mean, you saying God winks at you or something, the universe, God winks at you, like, it's basically like God's like, all right, bro, you're gonna go down there, you're gonna suffer and have a lot of pain and learn a bunch of shit. Have fun, see you when you get back.
Exactly.
Like, it's like, and then you're down here kind of lost and trying to figure it out and doing exactly that, right? Like,
It's such a game. It's such a trip. Such a trip. Maybe that's the next podcast. We have many ideas for the next episode. It's like, what is this trip that we're in, or the game, the simulation? What is our own creation? Are we here in our own creation of our own hologram, as you say a lot, Jesse, and I love when we riff on that. Yeah, and Ida and I've talked a lot about, like, we've done this before. Like, we have a feeling of, like, spiritual connection of, like, whether it is that soul family from past lifetimes, doesn't matter what the definition of reincarnation is, but something of that essence of, like, have we done this before on this planet, elsewhere? What is that familiarity? Is the familiarity just part of the simulation? I don't know.
No.
But man, is it entertaining. No, I like to give caveats. I don't know why I give all these caveats.
No caveats. Very black and white.
I try to appeal to all people, but maybe that's what we're doing on this podcast, because if you made it this far, thank you. And I think we said this at the end last time, like attracts like. That's been the spirit of this conversation, but also, like, in our friend circle, Vilcabamba, like, the whole essence of what we're inspired to come together is these are the conversations we have in Vilcabamba with our friends and people that you don't even know that well. But I don't think there's been a place on earth I've lived where I've just dropped so fast, so deep in some conversations, not every single one, but some of them, man, do we go right down and drop all the bullshit and all the, like, oh, you got to know a person a bit longer before you go. We just go in and it's real and it's right. You're giggling, yes.
Yeah, I had a beautiful experience recently about, like, I was in the middle with two people in the table, and, like, when we started talking about deep, well, I believe in reincarnation. Do you guys? Yes, we're all in, like, then, like, we can go deep.
Yes.
So it's beautiful. This is actually happening here. Like, it happened to me.
It does. And I'm having fun on the ride with you guys.
Oh, thank you.
Seriously.
Thank you.
And all of you, wait, I just thought of a shout out. I don't know if we're wrapping up or not, but shout out to all of those who live in Vilcabamba who are watching this right now, because I've so enjoyed and been, like, honored and humbled how many people have come up to me in town and said things about our first spiritual, like, I've been on a few different abundant living interviews and podcasts, and the health and wellness practitioners one for sure. People have said stuff. What's so interesting, more people have said stuff to me about the spiritual podcast one that we did. Folks that, one, I had no idea even watched the YouTube thing or would even admit it. That's one thing, they watch it, that's first. Two, they admit it. And then three, that they were super into the spiritual thing and actually thanked me. And I'm supposed to pass this on, I forgot, sorry, to both of you guys. They said specifically, thank you, and to Jesse and Ide for upgrading the conversation that's had in YouTube in general, but around Vilcabamba, because it's about nice weather and family activities. They're like, no one's talking about this in a way that, like, they can really resonate with in a format on YouTube and consistently. Sure, there's tons of content out there, but this was a real, and it was, the shout out was specifically to you, Jesse. Sorry, I forgot to tell you this.
That's quite all right.
But there's someone who said they've been here for years, and they said, I've been watching this, the YouTube series, not everyone, but a lot of it for years now. I was like, really? You do? You watch this? I just was surprised. And
I beg your pardon.
Yeah. So interesting. I wouldn't have guessed that, because I live here. I was like, what do you need to know about
living? Exactly, right.
I've lived here for years. I don't need to hike
a lot of time on your hands.
Hiking Mandango. But people find interesting, they learn things, and then also it was getting to know people. So the interview series of the practitioners, other expats here, people who live here find it super interesting. They learn more about Bruno and Alea, even though they go to Bruno and Alea for sessions. They said they never heard that about Alea's story until they watched my interview with her. And so Jesse, the compliment being done here, it's actually cool. We're doing it on this episode, is just saying thank you for, like, continuing to, like, grow and just expand. Like, it's been good, but, like, going new directions is being appreciated. So
Which, yeah, no, thank you for saying that, and I'm sure you'll share off air who said it to you, but thank you, whoever that is. But yeah, it's exciting, right? It's like things have their time, and you have to keep growing, and you have to take risks, and and you have to not get stale, right? You've got to, if the energy's not alive, or there's some sort of energy space that's kind of like, you got to, okay, well, what's next, right? Otherwise, life gets into that sort of wake up at 6, take a shower at 6:15, on the train at 7, work at 8:30, like lunch at 1,
I'm
back
getting
at
flashbacks actually.
right,
This is
right.
actually-
I mean, this is like most people in the world's life is sort of the hamster
So
wheel, right? And
boring,
that's
right?
that's not what this experience is about. So, anyhow. All right. If you enjoyed this content, guys, please like the video, share, subscribe to the channel. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear ideas for future episodes in the comments. Any thoughts that you guys have on anything we shared today, we'd love to hear from you. And again, this is a bi-weekly pod, so we'll be back in 2 weeks. Once we sort of run through some of these initial conversations, and thank you two both. I'm really enjoying this. We'll start to bring in some of the more interesting characters in Vilcabamba to have some, some hopefully high-level conversations on all kinds of esoteric subjects. And there really is some amazing people that live in this valley that have tremendous experience and expertise. And I think, we'll learn a lot in those conversations from them, and hopefully you guys will too. So thank you all again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you guys.